Um, helps with the editing. Um, okay, so welcome to the very first episode of uh, Beyond the Headlines, what I like to call Mostly Peaceful. It's my column, and we like to go beyond the headlines and really just have a great conversation about what's going on in the world from people who know, and to hopefully get you involved as an audience, to let us know what's going on in your towns, and maybe together as a country, as a community, as a town, as a greater village, we can all work together to help protect this nation. So I'm here today with JJ Carrell. JJ um, is a retired senior Border Patrol official or Border Patrol agent. And he's also the author of an incredible book that I've not only read, but I actually bought on Audible so I could get more of it because it's just so much, dare I say, terribly important information. But let me emphasize the terrible, because just when I thought the border was an awful situation, it's a terribly awful situation. Now, that sounds horrible to say, but the more information, the better, because once you have transparency on a situation, it's a hell of a lot easier to deal with it, to think about it, and to hopefully come up with solutions to help fix it. The book is called Invaded: The Intentional Destruction of the American Immigration System. And JJ has agreed to join me. And let me just say, I actually called JJ, and we had like a 1 hour, almost 2 hour conversation last week. Is great, and I just he has a lot of really interesting things to say, and beyond the border. And so hopefully, as time allows, or maybe in a future live stream, we're going to talk about everything going on. So without much further ado, JJ, welcome, and please tell us about yourself, how you ended up being an author, and what's going on now, and your thoughts in general about your career and the current state of things.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate it. My name is JJ Carrell. I'm a 24-year veteran of the United States Border Patrol. I retired as a Deputy Patrol Agent in charge of the Marietta Border Patrol Stations. This is a northern station within the 7 stations of San Diego sector. I believe I have a very unique perspective on the border because I was a frontline agent for a decade, down in the weeds, pushing out the policies, doing the back end, right? All the policies come down, and then I was down there fighting. And we all remember Trump coming down the escalator and saying, we're going to arrest all those Mexican rapists and murderers. And everybody was freaking out. I remember watching that and seeing everyone's reaction. And I thought, well, dear God, I've been doing that for 10 years. That's all I arrest is rapists and murderers and pedophiles and gang members. Why is everyone freaking out? So that gives me a very unique perspective there. And then I rose up the ranks to a senior leader in San Diego sector in the Border Patrol. So it gives me a great 30,000 foot view of law, policy, strategic placement of manpower and technology. And it also allows me to look at what Joe Biden and his administration is doing currently in the Border Patrol and be able to articulate it in layman's terms to people that, because our government, I know this is hard for a lot of people to, it's hard for me to stomach sometimes too, because I'm a patriot and I love my country, but I do not trust my government at all. And what you're seeing today is the intentional destruction of the immigration system. It's intentional. The policies, their actions, actually, you listen to their words, and it is an intentional destruction. And that was kind of the genesis, or what pushed me to write my book. Is I was outside of the Border Patrol for about a year. It's been 2 years now, and I decided I need, because everyone in the media, Brian, was talking very surface level. I'll show you a picture of 1,000 people crossing the Rio Grande, and you know, I'll show you a sob story, but nobody was talking about how are they doing this? How's our federal government allowing this to happen? Who's bringing these people of 175 nations out of 195 on planet Earth? How are they moving from South to Central America and up, and who's paying for it? And then what is the manifestation of this treason against our nation? And nobody would talk about it because they were afraid, right? They're afraid being called a xenophobe or racist. That means nothing to me. I don't care what people call me. And my book is factually detailed what is happening.
Yeah.
And I'm unapologetic and I'm unafraid to speak the truth, because in my mind, I believe we are in this situation in America, not only immigration, but all our social issues, all of our financial issues, is because men like me just shut up and remain silent. And I won't be I will not be one of those men.
Right. Well, let's just jump right into it then.
All right.
Um, I'm totally with you. I get as much detail as I can. I'm not as obviously connected as you. I've got maybe one source down there. And why? Why do they want to? And I totally agree. Seems very intentional. I understand from an article I read this morning that they opened up all these waterways or something like 100+ waterways for monsoon season normally, and it's not even raining, and that's like a big entry point.
Right.
I guess first I would say, who is destroying it uh, beyond the officials like Mayorkas? Who's he getting his direction from, or his inspiration from, or his money from? And
Right.
if he is, and then why? What's the end game here?
Well, let's start with the why, because that's rarely asked. And when people talk about the why, the problems on the border and in immigration are so complex and so layered, and they're intentionally complex and layered so you can't understand how they're playing this shell game, right? But the reasons why these complexities are happening are very simple, and it's very hard for people to make that connection because they think that the reasons have to mirror the complexities, and they're not. And in my book, I detail it's about power and money. That's it. That's all it is about. And I'll give you examples. If you go back not even a decade and you listen to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they were saying the exact same things that I write in my book and I say when I'm interviewed, that America has to have borders, it has to have security, it has to have sovereignty. We need to know who's coming in and out. Now that's out the door because the Democrats want votes. The ultimate goal of all of this is amnesty. And therefore, 99% of everyone that crosses into our border and then eventually becomes able to vote, or now are able to vote in general, local, and state elections in many of our states and cities, 99% vote Democrat. My question to you is rhetorical, of course, is how fast does that wall get built if 99% of those individuals vote Republican? It happened overnight, wouldn't it? And then the Republicans, and both Democrats and Republicans, this is a uniparty on this issue. We don't have a government that cares about American citizens. And the Republicans want wealth. And what is wealth? How does that translate? It is by cheap labor. Who runs the Republican Party? The Chamber of Commerce. And if you listen to anything the Chamber of Commerce says, it always is about more legal immigration, more we need to legalize or naturalize all the illegal aliens and make them part of our country, blah, blah, blah. It's just for cheaper labor. And let me give you an example. We have millions of people brought in under a fraudulent parole system where they're claiming asylum when we release them into America. There is one very, very important document, Brian, we never give any of these people, and that's a work authorization document. Why would you allow millions of people in our country and they can't provide for themselves? So what happens is what you have done as a society, as a government, brought these people in. Think of Americans are above this baseline and we're working and we have to get minimum wage. Well, you have millions of illegal aliens that are working for slave labor, and they can't get a real job with a social security number, paying so the employer doesn't have to pay social security, they don't have to pay workers' comp. So who loses? American workers lose, all for the benefit of power and more wealth. That's what our government is selling the citizenship and sovereignty of America for: power and wealth. It's that simple.
So let me ask you a question on this, and and when you talk about the work authorization, I'm talking about like the I-9 form that we all fill out when we get a job, that sort of thing.
No, it's an actual document that literally says work authorization. So let's say I'm a Haitian man and I come in with my wife and my 2 kids. I claim for asylum. I decide I'm going to go to New York City. Okay. And this is real. This is happening right now as we speak. I go to New York City with my family. the American government pays for my airline flight to New York City. I get to New York City. They put me in a homeless shelter or some halfway house or something or I sleep on the street. Okay. I can't get to see a judge, an immigration judge in New York because the docket is filled to 2032, not 2023, 2032. Okay. So I'm not going to get a work authorization document. I cannot work in America legally. And that's what the large corporations and elites want, is they want that cheap labor. Because when you look at, if you look at Kellogg's or you look at IBM or Google, all of the majority of their costs are labor, right? Because you have 401ks, healthcare, workers' comp, social, I mean, it just goes on and on. So if I could hire somebody that's illegal and I don't have to pay them $25 an hour, I can pay them $9.50 an hour. And then I don't have to pay all the other stuff that comes with it. So now my labor costs just shrunk. They don't turn out the product and sell it to me cheaper. They still sell it to the price they want. They just get more profit. And the person that loses is an American. So they're actually, work authorization document, and they refuse to give it to them because they can't until they get past 6 months, and then they apply for it.
But so even if they want to, they can't do things the right way.
Correct. But how immoral is that, Brian, as our government? So our government knows that they're bringing these people in by the millions, okay? And they're putting them in this position knowing that they can't work. But why would a government do that if they didn't know the back end of it, right? My point is, when you make a program, a policy in America, there's historical knowledge that comes with that. You know, when those people come in as asylees, that they can't get a work authorization document till about 6 months to 8 months out from their first initial, hey, this is where I'm at, I want to be an asylee. And then you're supposed to go in front of a judge and immigration and USCIS and a whole bunch of other agencies help you get work authorization documents. And now the states like New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, they're all screaming. The governors and mayors are screaming, they got to get work authorization documents. We can't just have them sitting around. Well, yeah, you do. You have to. You have to allow them to sit around because you're a sanctuary city and you allow them and welcome them to come in. Now you need to feed, clothe, shelter, and educate and medicate all of them. And what's happened, we're seeing now, Brian, is the major cities have become saturated with these illegal aliens and their whole social systems have crumbled. They're dire straits in New York City. I'll give you an example. New York City has over 200 hotels in New York City that are filled with illegal aliens and only house illegal aliens. Are there any U.S. citizens living in hotels that are homeless? The answer is no. But we're going to spend sometimes double, triple the rate for hotel occupancy for illegal aliens. Now, what do you think that does to an American citizen that's hard on his luck? He's homeless with his wife and kids, but he has to stay in the shelter or on the street because there's the homeless shelters are at capacity. But foreign nationals that broke our laws are given a hotel in a 4-star hotel in New York City, and they're getting 3 meals a day. They're getting laundry money to wash their clothes.
Give me just a second. Can you pause? There we go.
Yep.
We're good. Sorry about that little technical glitch.
No,
so they're getting all this money.
Yeah.
Now,
so
here, if I could just break in here. So
yeah,
I like you. I worked in the government. I was a contractor, but as you know, there's not much of a difference except for who pays us and the color of the badge.
right.
And so when I was working in government work in the intelligence field, none of these agencies really get along that well. I mean, I never really saw it, especially, like if you're between like Langley and the FBI, that's a very begrudging relationship and they just don't get, and then no one gets along. And they also fear, the IRS, the Senate oversight committees, all that. Isn't the IRS losing revenue from employer taxes if all of these huge businesses are I mean, kind of doing things illegally and under the table. I mean, where is all the big, all the big talk that Obama had about cracking down on 1099s or cracking down on employers that were abusing the employment system to avoid employer taxes? Where's the IRS on this? I would imagine that they want to collect their revenue so they can stay in business. Have you seen anything around that subject?
Yeah, well, I'll give you, yeah, it's a great question. ICE, who is in charge of doing employer sanctions, they do zero now. There's zero employer sanctions, meaning ICE agent goes in and goes to like some chicken meat packing plant in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. 1,000 people work there. Show me all the I-9. Show me your, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
half of them are illegal. Whoa, hold on a second. We shut them down. We fine them. Nope, there's not one agent doing that. It's a lie. Everything, what's amazing to me, Brian, is all of their treasonous activity. And I say that knowing full well what treason is. I'm not just flippantly saying it. All the treasonous activity Mayorkas and the Biden administration is doing, they're doing it openly. They're very arrogant about it because there's two things that are driving the arrogance. One, they're doing the majority of the damage through the DHS policies, which they do in secret and hiding. And second part is they're banking on the ignorance of Americans. They're just banking on it. And they just continually manipulate. Like I write in my book, I explained in detail what parole is. What is immigration parole? People don't, when they think of parole, they think of state and local prison. I'm going to allow X amount of prisoners out and they're going to do drug testing, etc. That's not immigration parole. Immigration parole maybe was used a couple hundred times a year to bring in material witnesses or some kind of some foreign national needs to see a very specialized doctor in America, something very, it was so rare, we rarely did it. Now we're in the millions of people being paroled. So we've taken a policy that was strictly used and tightly scrutinized, and we said, screw it. Everybody's allowed to come in. So when
that's
we're talking,
parole. That is, I mean, in this sense, that's
just parole.
Is
we're not
you're
talking
good to
about,
go. You're in the country now. Oh my God.
Well, but here's the dirty secret about parole that nobody knows about, and they don't want to, the government won't say it out loud because it will show their complicity and their malice. Okay. So let's say I'm that same Haitian man that comes in and I ask for asylum. They're going to give me a parole, meaning they're going to say, I'm going to parole you in for 60 or 90 days. You're going to go, where are you going to go? And I'll tell them New York City, such and such. I have no way to determine if that guy, there's millions of these people. There's tens of thousands every day. There are thousands going through every day, this process, tens of thousands every month. So guys are just agents are just pushing them through. And what my parole says, I have to present myself to the ICE office and then see the judge, and then they will give me a notice to appear and documents. Well, number one, the vast majority of these people they're not going to go to the government. They're just going to abscond in the wind. And the small percentage that do go to the ICE office, there's no one to see. They can't see anybody until 2032. So here's the dirty secret. Those people that are paroled, when that 60 to 90 days ends, their status turns into an illegal alien. So you brought all these people in with all this fanfare. We're going to take care of you. We're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And then 60 to 90 days, they become out of status and they become illegal aliens. Do you see how insidious all this is?
Oh, it's
done on
purpose. Across the board. So they get, it seems from, most of my data is secondary. I mean, thank God I have multiple sources like Rumble, and thank God for Getter, and then people like Steve Bannon and all the real patriots who are 6 weeks, 7 weeks ahead of the news cycle. Now I'm seeing a lot of phones. I'm seeing some pretty well-dressed people. Yes. Yeah, I imagine they get some of that donated, but maybe they don't. But just on the phones alone, why the phones? And if at the end of that 60-day status, do their phones just get shut off and they're basically, hey, you're here, you're on your own? I mean, what happens then?
The vast majority of people coming in get either alternative to detention, ATT, ATD, and that's an ankle bracelet which they cut off, or they get a brand new iPhone. Brand new iPhone. And their service is paid by the US government. So they just take their iPhones and abscond. And then you say, well, they can track them. Okay, who's tracking them? Who's right now? Their
that was my next
DHS
question.
yeah. Who's okay? When I talk to my ICE, I've only been out for 2 years, right? So I have all my former colleagues that are still working, all my contacts in DHS and ICE, and I talk to my ICE supervisors and I ask them, okay, well, who's following them? And they just laugh. They go, what do you mean who's tracking them? I said, well, who's tracking these iPhones? Who's tracking this? There ain't nobody tracking this. I said, this is a lie. And in my book, I write about the alternative to detention. And Syracuse University did a FOIA on the 350,000 of them and found that they don't have any records. They don't know who they are. They don't know who they gave the iPhones to or the ankle bracelets. The incompetence and corruption in immigration right now is at levels that I could not even imagine during my career. It is, let me just put it in terms of numbers so the audience can understand.
Okay.
Joe Biden, at the end of his FY23, will have allowed in 1 year 3 million people in 1 year, and almost all of them have been released. At the end of this third year, he will have arrested, the Border Patrol will have arrested 7 million people, with the vast majority of them being released into America.
Have arrested. What about the gotaways? I mean,
okay, that's a great question, Brian, because right now, as you and I are speaking, there are hundreds, not a mile or two, there are hundreds of miles of the 1,900 plus miles of the southern border. There's not one Border Patrol agent patrolling, not one.
I heard that.
So,
I think I read that in your book. That is insane.
So what the rule of thumb is, is equal to the number arrested is the number of getaways, minimum, conservative. So by my estimations, I believe under Joe Biden, he has arrested, encountered, or had absconded in the open border up to 15 million people. 15 million. That's about 4% of the population in 1 year. In 3 years.
Like I said, this is horrible but super important information. And now, so this is of course, like battle, all our plans go to the wind when the first shot is fired. Same with a good conversation like this. It's just a ton of questions I have just from what you've said. You mentioned earlier the betrayal, which I completely agree with. And I should state for the audience that my views and the views of my guests are not necessarily the views of Daily Clout Inc. But I have my views, and I'm very loud about them, and I don't care who agrees with me or not. But and I'm sure JJ, I know you feel the same way. So here's the thing that is really bothering me about this. And I was trained initially in, well, of course, I was in the army, so I was trained how to mow lawns. But I was also along the way learned some intelligence analysis and pattern recognition. And what I'm noticing since beyond the border, since really what I say the acceleration of the attack on this country from within and without, there's a harmonization of all these elements seem synchronized. For instance, you have ICE handling all of these illegal immigrants coming through, but it seems like, especially in California along the border and even into this country, the Justice Department is also like almost avenging the illegal immigrants when, for instance, they're shot when they're trying to break into someone's house. Like we've had the case out in California and Texas where this very elderly man was defending his home. The guy he shot turned out to be a major cartel person. And now this, I believe this man is probably going to jail for the rest of his life. I'm not up on the case currently. I'm seeing a coordination up and down the board here. Like I'm seeing DOJ, I'm seeing ICE, And I'm also seeing at the state level, especially these blue states and a lot of the red and purple states, I'm hearing a lot of words like up in New York. I'm hearing Hochul saying this is wrong and you got to stop doing it. It's a federal problem. Yet she's not saying no to setting up just in yesterday's New York Times. I think I said the article. They're setting up what sounds like the same kind of camps we'd have for, pre-battle staging in the military,
Yeah.
right in Staten Island, right up against people's homes with generators and all this stuff. And then also same thing with this Mayor Adams is he's shouting out a lot of stuff, but he's not saying no. He's still
Right.
taking people, he's still accepting them. And then here in Massachusetts, we have Governor Healy, who let hotels lower the sanitation standards for hotels and increase the occupancy maximum for hotels to accommodate illegal immigrants, which don't even get me started on the pandemic explosion of an actual pandemic that is just bound to cause. Um, so have you, as much as you can say without, violating any 75-year clearance agreements or anything like that, but did you see any sort of coordination, or are you seeing it? Are you talking to people where like there's elements they're working with that they normally wouldn't work with? For example, um, our border friends of yours saying, "Hey, it's really weird, but Federal Protective Service has really been down here a lot, or there's been a lot of IRS or HHS." Are you seeing that sort of thing?
No, but what I'm going to tell you what's happening, it's a good question, but it's going a different way. Okay. And the way that the DHS is doing it is it's walling off certain groups. So what's happening in San Diego might not be happening in Texas and vice versa. They're not allowing. So let me give you an example. We have the Joint Terrorism Task Force, JTTF. Every time you get a terrorist hit a watch list, they come interview them and determine. They don't even come into
Right.
San Diego and even do interviews anymore because they're arresting so many people that are hitting the terrorist watch list. So they're just either they're determining they're at the station and then release them into America if they can't find a connection, but they're unknown. So where you're seeing this, I just read this today, and people don't, the non-governmental organizations, you hear the media say NGOs, Catholic Charities, Lutheran Family Services, Jewish Family Services, United Way, and then 100 other little mom and pop ones run. But it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. So when you're asking, is there a coordination of what's going on? Only in the way that the DHS makes those connections, meaning I'm the Border Patrol or I'm ICE. I arrest all these people. There's nowhere for me to put them, so I'm just releasing them. Who am I releasing to? It's either one of two things. I'm either releasing straight into the street or I'm turning them over to the NGOs. And the NGOs take them, they take a cut of the money or a large bid contract, and they farm them out to other groups within their NGO umbrella.
So,
what
so they have like a subcontracting relationship like we'd see in any industry, except it's a bunch of
correct.
NGOs.
So,
Okay.
Brian, when you start to find out that the HHS lost 85 to 100,000 children, they can't figure out where the hell they are, then they have deniable culpability. They go, well, Catholic Charities, that's their contract. We'll start to look into Catholic Charities. No. This is you, HHS. Let me give you an example of what's happening. Michael Yon and Ann Vandersteel just broke this wide open. There are two former Walmarts in Brownsville, Texas, that were retrofitted into child detention camps. Okay, now think about this as in America. Excuse me?
And were they still owned by Walmart?
No, they're like one of those big box stores but they were formerly Walmart stores. One Walmart store holds 5,000 boys, and the other one holds 5,000 girls. And what they discovered, which is very interesting, and I know it takes us down a whole different road, but as you and I talked offline, it's all connected, right? It's all connected.
Yep.
They're finding out that the people, they're called escorts or chaperones, are taking these children because you have a Flores decision where you have like 14 days once a child is arrested to get them out of your facility, federal facility, and put them with a sponsor, a parent, which is never a parent, is usually an aunt, uncle, cousin, or somebody 6 stages removed from relation. But they're finding out that a lot of these children are going to wealthy neighborhoods in Florida and New York. And you have to ask yourself, hold on a second. So wealthy Americans are taking in illiterate indigenous children from across the globe? What? Why wouldn't they, if they really wanted children, go get foster care? Well, because foster care and CPS has rules and regulations and policies and do follow-up. So Brian, do you know how much follow-up is done once these children are released? Zero. There's nobody checking on them. So I am telling you right now that there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of migrant children that are just being abused sexually.
So they're just, I mean,
they've
yeah, that's where I knew you were going with that. And what about other, I mean, and as the, yeah, let me get my thoughts about me. It actually makes me sick.
Okay, but you go back to that. You go back to NGOs. Okay, in my book, I write about, I'm a Catholic, and the United States bishops, Catholic bishops, 90% vote Democrat. I don't even know how they square that between my faith and Democrats, but they've received in the last several years over $3 billion of federal grants. Do you see how lucrative this is? That's just one.
From like,
we're not talking about the hundreds more.
Right. And are we talking like CARES Act money?
We're just talking federal money to refugee resettlement. And refugee resettlement could be anything under the stars. Our own faith leaders, our own religious organizations are purposely destroying America, and they are part of the human trafficking that's occurring in America. This is one of the largest, biggest stories in America right now, and nobody wants to talk about it. Thank God for Sound of Freedom, because it put a spotlight on child sex trafficking.
Yep.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg, Brian. This is just think of looking at a giant iceberg and going, holy cow, that iceberg is huge, and that represents child trafficking. You have no idea how big it is below the surface. You have no idea the amount of elites and corporations and people that are sucking money off of these kids and then trafficking them. It's insidious, and it is a stain on the soul of America. It is. We're the number one consumer of child pornography.
Yep.
Do you know that? Number one consumer.
And not only, and I think we're the number one consumer of, human trafficking. I mean, we're the number one customers. I mean, I remember living in DC and going to like Capitol Grill, and my coworker said that, that guy there, I think that's a rent boy. Have you heard that term?
No, I haven't.
Where these young men with these older guys. And honestly, like, I saw that stuff a long time ago. I didn't see it, but I mean, you know what it is when you see it walking on the street.
I understand.
In Pattaya, Thailand, for instance, where it was disgusting, but they had a whole area called Boys Town, and it's all in the name. And it's mainly, I'd see like a lot of Europeans and everything, and it was horrible. And of course, being in the military, that wasn't our mission. We're not going to go raid a bunch of hotels. We wouldn't. But to see it here, beyond this pandemic time, and we're talking back to like 2004, 2005, and I just saw it everywhere. Like, when you know what to look for, as like you said in your book, you guys know what to look for in terms of who belongs here and who doesn't. When you know the pattern, you see it, you're like, oh man, this is an epidemic. And so another question I have is, beyond the sex trade, are there instances where kids, humans, everything are being used for, whether you know or not? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I see a lot, like with vaccine research for RSV and all this. You see all these trials with kids, but you never can see the identity of the kids, obviously. I can't believe that there's that many parents in America that would say, "Yeah, take little Johnny here. He's 3, he's super healthy, and let's experiment on him for." I mean, I often wonder, are some of these kids ending up in these trials, and God knows with whom, or being used as like, you know, real like almost like slave labor. I know in Maryland back in I think the 50s there was a huge insane asylum in I think it's Rikerstown, Maryland. And I went up there because I used to do this urban exploring stuff when I bought a drone. And it was a really creepy place. I read in the history, and they were they were like farming out these patients to rich people in Baltimore to like be like house slaves, basically. And, we're talking, all races. And are you hearing anything like that in addition to, the most, the horrible thing we just talked about?
Well, what I have seen with Sarah Carter, who's a great investigative journalist, she was on a podcast, and it's in my book, where she talks about organ harvesting from the cartels of children before they come in.
No. Tell me
So,
about that. That's
it,
that's something I'm very interested in.
so you take a child, and the parents just give these kids away. There's so much to talk about, right? It's so layered in the way of, do we want individuals in our country that just let their kids go with complete strangers, 1,000 miles away from the border? And I have a son. Am I going to let him
Mhm.
traverse America on his own with some
Right.
dude that's a cartel member that's going to smuggle him up into Canada? Are you insane?
Yeah.
So these people, it's been already documented, but at what level, I don't know, where the cartels just take their organs, harvest them, and then they put drugs in the children and they become body mules.
So
Now,
wait, before they farm them out to, you know, sex shops and homes for sex and everything, you're saying they're grabbing the healthy organs so they can kind
that's
of
what
like
Sarah Carter
maximize the
said. And
profitability?
yep, yeah, they can do
And Sarah
anything.
Carter said that.
Yeah, it's in my book. I have it documented, and everything that's in my book, everything that I'm talking to you about, Brian, I've researched. Either I did it myself, meaning I
No,
experienced it and I lived it.
your research is
Uh,
solid. Yeah.
So if you want to dispute me, I always
Yeah.
love to tell people, please fact check me to death. I want you to fact check me
Right.
because it's going to prove me correct. But let's get to
And
the
I'm
point
happy
of,
and I'm happy to set up the debate with
oh, thank you.
anyone
I'll
that
I'll debate anybody on this
uh,
topic, because, and then before we continue, I think it's very important because the left loves to make it convoluted, this conversation convoluted, because they like to say, well, you're a racist because you don't like legal immigration. I'm like, hold on. Let's make sure we frame this conversation the correct way. I'm completely for legal immigration. Completely. I think it's great. We can have a discussion on who, how many, that's fine. But legal immigration is great. I'm talking about illegal immigration.
mhm.
And that's apples and oranges. Okay. Now, when you talk about children coming in, so let me ask you, Brian, I don't know. I don't have any data that says they're using kids for medical studies. But let me ask you something. Is it too far of a bridge to cross if you're pushing a 10-year-old boy between 5 to 10 johns a day for sexual pleasure and destroying that boy's body, then taking that kid down to some experimental treatment and drug him up? I don't think that's a
No,
bridge too far to cross. I think it's
I don't
kind of
think so
even.
either.
And then what
Yep.
you also got to
Right.
see, and I don't know if you've seen these videos, Real America's Voice, Grant Stinchfield has a couple guys that work, investigative reporters on the border. And what we're starting to see is video of men carrying children and claiming they're their children, and they're completely drugged out, incapacitated, don't
Mm.
respond, like dead, like almost dead, like drugged out druggies, but they're 5 years old, pumped with whatever, heroin, whatever, and they're just the hearts are barely pumping, and they're just holding them. This is my family. You have to release me. Okay. we release you. The degradation, the evil that is occurring on the border is at such levels that you can't even fathom what's going on. And I write this in my book, and people need to understand the border is almost like it's not on planet Earth. It's not its own country. It's almost like its own planet. It's bizarro land with
And you
violence
described
ramping up.
you described it as almost like a living, breathing thing that
Yes.
just chews you up. And if you're not tough enough, if you don't got the stuff, it's going to eat you up.
It will.
That really caught my attention in the book. Keep going. Yeah, this is wow,
And I just don't know. I don't know if the American, I think there's something happening in America right now where there's almost like this awakening. You see it in Oliver Anthony's song, that country music song, Richmond, North of Richmond. It's hitting a chord. You're seeing all racists looking at what's happened to Donald Trump and losing their mind and going, hold on a second. This is insanity. This has got to stop. Something's happening. However, when it comes to the border, because the media is so complicit in the lies and distortion of the narrative, I don't believe people have a grasp or even an inkling of truly what is happening and the level of treason against our nation. And let me just give you one data point that it shouldn't shake America, right? U.S. is called Center for Immigration Studies.org, CIS.org, and they are one of the premier immigration websites that focus on just data. And they're indisputable. No one even argues with them, right? They go, okay, that's true. Well, their main demographer and one of the researchers back in March. So we're looking at, we're looking at what, a couple months, 3, 4, 5 months. And they did a census data point. They used the government census, and they looked at data residents, new residents from 2016 to 2021, because that was the last time they could get a full year's data. And they determined the total population growth in America, meaning just people, not citizens, just growth of people. 77% of all America's growth in those 5 years were illegal aliens, foreign nationals, and their children. And they went further and they looked at half of 2022 and said, these numbers, if they continue, and there's no reason why they shouldn't, that we're in the 80 percentile. So my question to anybody that debates me or says, I always ask this, please tell me how that benefits America. Without all your diversity and all your other crap you want to talk about, how is it good that 80% of all new residents in America are not U.S. citizens? There is not a nation, a civilization in the history of mankind that survived this. This is not about race or ethnicity. This is the fundamental transformation of America through demographic change of citizens versus non-citizens. Because, Brian, how hard is it to come to you and me and change my mind that the Second Amendment is really not a absolute, you have to give me your guns.
Yeah, we're not going to.
It's never going to happen. But how easy it is to talk to millions of people, tens of millions, that are, half of them are illiterate in their own language, not English, in their own language. Half of them have education of 8th grade or less. How hard is it to convince them? They have no understanding that we're a republic. They have no knowledge of our Constitution or Bill of Rights. So they could tell them what to do, and they'll do it because they're dependent on those treasonous bastards to give them all their food, money, shelter. They're dependent on them. And you and I are not. We grew up in the understanding that our government is us. We own them. We are a republic. We are not a democracy, and we're damn sure not a monarchy. So it's the fundamental transformation of America from citizens to non-citizens. And if we stay at an 80 percentile growth year over year of non-citizens, our sons will grow up in a world where there's over 300 something million non-citizens versus the minority that are citizens. How do you think that's going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, well, and you're hitting on something that I wanted to bring up with you. Um, and again, and I love talking to you because I think we both have those tactical, strategic ways of connecting the dots, but you're coming from a different angle I am. I see this as, especially the way you're describing it. I mean, this is literally absorbing our country from within.
Mhm.
And I see this as an invasion where the end result is the same. The end result is to get rid of Americans, keep the
Mhm.
resources, keep the land, the housing's being built. We've seen that. Um, and what a way to invade and conquer our country without firing a shot. Because what
Right.
I've noticed too is almost every country, and I guess we'll have to do another segment to talk about how the hell they even get, to South America. But every country they're coming from are Belt and Road countries,
Mhm.
and they're all compliant. Uh, they come from compliant groups. You're not seeing South Koreans come through. You're not seeing people from Belarus come through. You're seeing, and I bring those two up because those are two countries that actually stood up to the Chinese Communist Party. And for those who don't know what the Belt and Road is, one belt, one road. This is well, it's described as this wonderful way of like expanding the new Silk Road so we could all have a harmonized trade throughout the world, which
Sure.
originates and ends with China. What it really is, it's the colonization of countries, turning them into vassal states, basically the conquering of them
Yep.
after their infrastructures have mysteriously collapsed. And then China swoops in with these no payback toxic loans. And by no payback and toxic, as contradictory as that sounds, what I mean by that is they come with these loans and they rarely make people pay them back. But if you don't meet certain stipulations, for instance, securing,
Mhm.
the oil refinery in Ethiopia or something like that, well, then they're going to put some PLA soldiers in, and oh, by the way, they own your airport.
Yep.
And 64% of the world is under this Belt and Road. So if I were the Chinese Communist Party, and they've said it. They said we've got to go. We are the Ma, I think they said in
Mhm.
2003, which was mistranslated into saying we're like the competitors. No, they were saying no. These are the enemy. These are the people that got to go. They're in the way. The Americans above all else. Um, what a way to conquer a country is to
Well,
just flood it and
well,
just
they
press
are.
everything else out. And if you see what happened with like the pandemic, they left alcohol and they left pot open, which if you're depressed and you're waiting to go back to work and you start drinking and smoking pot, and then they start handing you unemployment money, that American work ethic is just extinct after 2 years. And I myself know that if I'm between clients and I get like 3 weeks off because I had a very good job that paid a lot of money, 3 weeks it takes me. It's an effort to get back to work and get my juices flowing again and get in the
Yep.
rhythm. Think about how the work ethic is destroyed, especially among millennials, which is the
Mhm.
target group for this. Um, and I'm not picking on millennials. I have a millennial daughter and a millennial son, and like they are the targets. They're the ones that if I were China, and by this I mean the Chinese Communist Party, not the Lao Beijing. If I were China, I would be focused on that group because that is the
Okay.
group
Well,
that is fighting
yep.
age that I would have to deal with. Just destroy their work ethic, destroy their prospects. They can't buy homes anymore. Destroy it all, and then when these kids go to get jobs again, they're gone because their replacements are also pouring through the border, and
Well,
they're not those jobs are gone.
I think it's a great segue because I think, okay, let's take China, for example. Number
Hmm.
one, our border is more vulnerable to the enemy as ever before. There's 195 countries on planet Earth. Over 175 nationals from those nations have been arrested and counted. So almost the whole globe's coming. Let's look at China's numbers. Okay. In 2022, there was 1,970 Chinese nationals arrested. Okay. We're in, we are now in FY 2023 with 2 more reporting months left. We've arrested over 18,000 Chinese nationals,
And
18,000,
I
majority
and
military age men. And here's
And
where the interesting,
that's a number I heard from Frank Gaffney. So I know you're spot on, because it's like that is the number, right around that number, 18,000. And if I could cut in on you for a second,
yeah,
you know what that number is close to? It's a brigade.
yes. And the majority are single adult males. And you said this is maybe something we talk on about another segment, and I agree. But I
Yeah.
want to make this one point about the Chinese nationals and Michael Yan, who's an investigative reporter from down in the Panama Gap, the Darien Gap. And it's
Hmm.
dangerous, right? It's a horrific trek, and people are being raped and abused and murdered in this trek. All the people take that trek except Chinese nationals. So the cartels run everything everywhere. And it is, you pay for them and it's merciless, right? So
Right.
somebody's paying for the Chinese nationals not to take that cartel route, but take a safer route. So that means they had to pay exorbitant fees to cartels to get the permission to make this alternative travel route for all these
What
single
is that?
adult Chinese.
But what is that route? I mean, is that more planes landing closer to the border? I mean, what
Yes.
is that? What
Yeah.
is
They're not
as a
walking. They're not walking through
right,
the jungle, and they're not being raped and
right,
sodomized and ripped of clothes and taken all their money and everything and left destitute. So they're going
right?
a different route. It's easier, it's quicker, and it's a straight main line to China, I mean to America, and then we release them. Brian, we've been talking for about maybe 40 minutes to an hour, and this situation is so dire. It is so layered. We haven't even discussed drugs, terrorists, criminals crossing the border. We haven't even see how this mutant octopus with 100 tentacles that are permeating through America, society, and all of our social services, education,
Hmm.
healthcare, crime. It is unfathomable what is happening to America right now. And I believe once we finally wake up, and if Trump and I'll just say it straight out, and I say it in my book, the greatest border president in the history of America was Donald Trump. If he's not reelected and we have another year of this demented old fool who is just a puppet, we are going to never recover. Never. By the end of Biden's 4 years in office, my data, my numbers, and I challenge anybody to debate me on this, that he will have allowed in 25 million people. 25 million. That is, if we just use DHS data, he will have allowed in 12.5 million just on their data, which is all lies and faulty, just their data. That even if I just
Let
in my
me.
book, that's what I do, Brian. But
It,
let me just make this one point.
hmm. Yeah.
I don't trust the DHS data. I see how they manipulate. I lived it,
No.
and then I see it later. But even just using their data at face value is so horrible. I don't need to even say this is what the real number is. Okay, let's use what their data is. Are you okay in 4 years having almost 13 million people into your country illegally that speak no English, that have nothing in common with America? Are you okay with that? And the answer is
13
never, it's
million.
always no.
Wow. Well, this is, I mean, this is how. I mean, if you look at the fall of the Roman Empire, right?
Hmm?
And really they fell from within and they had an organized system of, I think they were called foederate or federate, where they would envelop the native residents,
Yeah,
and then after they conquered them, make them part of the army. And
yeah.
the commanders get like land and stuff. Well, those are the people that eventually sacked them and phased them out. We have a worse situation, if you think, and they were around for about 1,000 years,
Mm-hmm.
give or take. We have a worse situation because we have an uncontrolled version of that. And I think it was you, and there's one point I do want to talk about. Um, and we'll have to stop soon, and we're going to keep going on this for several segments, if you don't mind, because this
Yes,
is
of course.
riveting and important, and hopefully we could get some calls to action, for the audience, even if for anything, even if it's a lost cause, to slow it down, to do something. Because but maybe it was you that mentioned it. With all of these different groups coming in, especially like you take like South America, like El Salvadorians, Haitians, these are rival gangs.
Mhm.
You know, if you look at the Haitian gangs and like the MS-13, like these are rival, and you know, I think the Haitian gangs are the only ones MS-13's ever been scared of, who's, you know, they're running from them. Um, these are going to spill in. I'm guessing these are going to start exploding in our cities, exploding in our towns.
Absolutely.
Like these wars are just going to be these gang wars are going to be transported up here. And with the defunding of police, with the immigrants becoming the police in Chicago, if you saw that
Yep.
story,
Yep. Mhm.
um,
How
this
well
is a
does that
nightmare. I
go?
mean, this
How
is
well
this
does
is a
that
fifth
go
column
when,
of.
huh?
It
I
doesn't go
agree,
anywhere.
Brian.
What? Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere. You're basically, I mean, and there, you know, anyone who's still in Chicago, I'd you know recommend leaving now. But you know, the other thing too is like, and my son brought this up, and just so you know, my angle is all that I believe all of this is China. I think we're complicit. Our people are not us, but our people are complicit because they're taking the money. I don't know if that's hubris, stupidity, a lack of understanding of history, or thinking that, hey, the hubris part is, hey, we'll take their money now, and then when the time is right, we'll shut them down. You know, I've seen that all in DC, across the intelligence world, across the political spectrum, whatever the cause, it's happening. And my son brought up a really good point because he's starting to think strategically. He's starting to think like a tactician as well. Um, you know, he's around myself and my wife, Dr. Naomi Wolf, all day, so he's got more geopolitical knowledge than most adults do. Um, and unlike half the teachers at a school, he can point to Ukraine on a map as well as Russia, Belarus, and El Salvador. But he brought up a good point. He said, "Hey, Dad, look where Chicago is, right near the Great Lakes, obviously." He said, "It's completely lawless." And he said, "And the police are now from other countries." He said, "When people invade countries, don't they need a forward operating base?" And he said, "Because couldn't they come in through Canada, through the Great Lakes, and set right up?" I said, "Well, I don't have any data to support that, but it makes a lot of sense."
Yeah, it does.
And that's a 12-year-old who just learned how to play Risk, but he's looking at all this. And I bring up his age for this reason. Everyone's got to get educated. If the 12-year-olds are getting themselves educated, because those kids are worried. I believe your son and my son are roughly the same age.
Yes,
They're
12.
those kids are thinking about this stuff because they're
Yeah.
seeing it, and they're seeing it through younger eyes that are not, you know, muddled by, you know, politics and ridiculous arguments. They're seeing the video games they play coming to life, to the point where,
Yes.
you know, they don't even want to go to places like Chicago, and they're not interested in going to Disneyland because they're worried about it. So the question there is, do you do you see this as part of a large offensive by China?
I see this. I think when I wrote this book, I really had to, it was a rush, right? Because things were happening so fast. I've never seen the government work this fast before. But when I forced myself to go back and look at the totality of what's happening, if you look at what is happening in on the globe, in the Western nations, European Union, sans Hungary, everything that's happening in America is happening there. It started a long
Yes.
time ago. So we have this giant migration of people from very, very poor countries in the South moving up into the Western Hemisphere. And if you listen to the politicians, they all say the same damn thing. We are just accelerated beyond what's happening in Europe. So when you ask me, is
Mm.
China behind it? I believe that this is more of the Great Reset. And people scoff, right? Oh God, you're conspiracy theorists. And I go, okay, hold on. Can you look at this video, this video, this video, this video? Here's a couple articles. They're saying out loud. I didn't come up with the Great Reset. JJ Carrell sitting in his podcast room going, what do we call this? I think it's a great reset. No, the powers to be used that. They said it. They said out loud, we're going to have a great reset where we're going to blur the lines and borders and everyone's going to work in harmony. It's absurdity.
Oh,
it's
Justin Trudeau said it with a smile on his face, like almost looked confused when people are like, are you out of your freaking mind?
Well,
If
you don't have to
recall
go
in
far.
2021, he's like, what a great opportunity for a great reset.
And you got Joe Biden saying when he was vice president, laughing, going, yeah, we're bringing in so many minorities, so many immigrants into America that the Anglo whites are going to be the minority. Isn't that great? That's just what America needs. And I was like, no, hold on. You don't get to determine what the demographic makeup of America is. Now, I always ask this to all people who interview me, especially African Americans, and they say, well, I don't really see a big deal. I go, really? You don't see a big deal? I don't care. In America, no one cares about race. The truth is, we don't care. Americans are Americans. And if there is a demographic shift in race, as the Democrats like to talk about it, I don't care if whites decrease because of birth rates and blacks increase or Hispanics, Asians. Who gives a crap? We're Americans. I don't care now, but I do care when you artificially bring in large millions of people and you disrupt the demographic characteristic of America. And I always ask African Americans this from leftist cities and states. Did you know that because the Democrats forced me to talk this way in demographics, do you know that the black population is now not the number one minority in America? And they're like, what? I go, you didn't know that, did you? It's Hispanics. And it's not because Hispanic Americans had more birth rates. We artificially disturbed and disrupted the demographics of America because for years we've allowed millions of illegal alien Hispanics into a country, and now you are below them. And when in American politics and power, you've just lost an incredible amount of leverage and power. Are you okay with that? I'm not okay with it.
That is, and honestly, I think it's a godsend that, I honestly like the MVP of the week for the Forces of Freedom. I would have to give that one to Fannie Willis down there in Fulton County.
Perfect.
Because she has helped galvanize and wake up so many people, especially the Black Americans in Fulton County, who are saying, hey, wait a minute, this is some bullshit. And I think it's reminding, and I'm helping remind them as much as I can with whatever means I can. I'm also reminding them that, like, when the MLS was taken away from the people of Atlanta, Georgia, the Major League Baseball, MLB, how did that help them? You take a huge source of income for so many people. And I used to live in Augusta. I live very close, and these annual events, these are huge. I mean, these are seasonal type of employment forces down there. We had the Masters down there in Augusta, where I was. That was huge. That was huge for me. I was a soldier. I got to rent out my apartment for like $3,000 for the week, and so they take that and they gave that to Denver. So you take, something that out of a population that's I believe 89% Black, and you give it to Denver, who's 11%, and the rest are mainly white. People have to sit, and maybe they are saying that, and they just don't have a loud enough voice or a way to amplify that. And for everyone listening, I am happy to help get that voice amplified. But how did that help anyone? Just like, how is immigration helping them? I mean, they are the people to be replaced in terms of a lot of jobs.
And the lower economic ladder gets destroyed. The lower rungs get destroyed. And that's
for now,
ultimately in my book. And for now, and it's going to rise
because
up.
it's gonna, yeah,
Of
exactly.
course, and as I talk about this, and I go to interviews and I talk about my book. Ultimately, the question that I pose throughout my book is, if I'm wrong, and I'm 180 degrees and I'm just wrong, then please tell me the benefit to American and Americans for unfettered illegal immigration. And I sit here and in discussions I have with leftists and even rhinos, and I ask that question. We literally sit in silence and we just
And
look
for
at each
everyone,
other.
for anyone new to that term, rhinos are fake Republicans, or,
Yes.
Republicans in name only.
But we sit there, Brian, and we just stare at each other, and I won't break the silence. I just sit there and look at them. And you can see the wheels turning. They're trying to make some kind of argument that it's good for America. And ultimately, it's not. And then my follow-up question to these people are, if it's not, and you and I both agree that legal immigration is good, then why can't we go to Congress through our representatives and get the number increased and we do it economic sectors or merit-based, whatever it is. But once we get to that point and we say, okay, we need 10 million, okay, 10 million legal immigrants every year, okay, what are you going to do about the other billions of people that want to come to America? How are you going to stop them? They never have an answer.
Yeah.
And the answer is look, Americans, the greatness of America is we have opportunity and freedom. But opportunity and freedom are built on the foundation of law and order. If you don't have law and order, you have chaos. And when chaos, there's no opportunities or freedom, because the people, the strongest people, physically strongest and evil in their brain, they dominate and society crumbles. So the people that are coming for that opportunity and freedom have actually caused chaos in our nation by illegal immigration. Yep. Why can't we all agree that America is a sovereign nation? Then you have to have borders. You have to have a legal means to come in. And we do, but our powers to be, Mayorkas and Biden and the rhinos, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, on and on and on, Tillis in North Carolina, all those men and women leaders, they want more power and wealth, and they'll destroy America to get it. They don't care. And we're seeing it play out right now in real life, in real time. Right now, as you and I spoke in the last hour, I'll guarantee you at least minimum 1,000 people cross the border. 1,000 in an hour. Wow. Okay.
And we don't know who they are. We don't know their
health. Would say at least half of them, you have no idea who they are. None.
Right.
None.
Hey, really quickly, before we wrap up for this, because I think we have much more to talk about. And by the way, when I laugh, I'm not taking it lightly. It's just,
no, I know.
You're a field guy. It was our sense of humor that gets us through the toughest of times.
Yes.
And I know you're a field guy, because when I read your book, I'm like, he's actually been to the field. Like, I've read a lot of books and I'm like, yeah, he's making it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I almost felt like I was there, and I'm just still wincing at the beginning of the book when you took that fall that you described. That was just one of the most awful things I've ever heard. But what I was going to say is really quick, and I'm not trying to convince you that, and I don't disagree that it's the Great Reset. I just see it more as the Great Reset guys are, they're all those Joker bank robbers in the second Dark Knight movie. Yeah. I think China is the Joker. So when they do all the heavy lifting and get the world where they want it to be, China's just going to shoot them all, because they're the only ones that have an army. And
I would not agree with that. I would not disagree with that. I would not. As I've gotten older, all of the conspiracy theories have turned out to be true. Right? So when somebody says, well, this is probably happening and I believe it because of X, Y, and Z, I don't dismiss anything anymore. I say, I don't know that angle. I'm going to do research on that and see if that theory is correct or not.
You have to.
Why would that, if you look at China and Russia and Iran, why would you intervene in America right now meaning directly. Why wouldn't you just indirectly allow us to destroy ourselves? If they're going to allow me, China, to send in a brigade of my army and intelligence
Yeah.
officers, and you're going to welcome them. In fact, you're going to build them housing, you're going to feed them. I don't even have to pay them. And you're going to do that? Let's go. We'll keep sending thousands and thousands of our men
Yeah,
there.
exactly. And then, and where command and control is. And that actually, that was my question was, let's say, we're both right, we're both kind of wrong, it doesn't really matter in my opinion because it's happening.
It's
It's
happening.
just like I say, I don't care who sent the burglar, why the burglar's in my house, he's in my house.
Yeah.
Um, um, and that's just, the tactical in me. But what I was going to ask you is like, so let's say, okay, so we know these Chinese nationals are there, you and I know your experience is very similar to the military in terms of structure and physical
Command and
fitness
control.
training,
Yep.
everything like that. You know what people that do a lot of push-ups look like, and there's a certain walk, and you know what military people or uniformed field people look like. Now maybe I'm seeing what I want to see, maybe I'm giving them some confirmation bias. When I saw some of the footage, and it's Frank Gaffney, who I if uh of Secure in America podcast and many other things. He's a good friend. I believe you may have spoken to him or of him. But he's a incredible China watcher, and he's there. He's sounding the alarm. Um, and he's been in the mix. But um, one thing he pointed out was like he sees it as like pre-positioning, the kind of the chaos column, like people that are there going to come through that can really cause even more chaos, which is perfect. That's exactly what you want if you're going to invade a country. I mean, that's really what artillery is when you're doing air bursts over soldiers, you're there to scatter them, you're there to cause confusion, chaos, and then you swoop in. um when I hear 18,000, 18,000,
But let me
I mean,
interrupt
we'd
you.
be lucky.
That's what only, Brian, let me interrupt you. That's only what we arrested. I don't know
Jesus.
how many more came in through the open border. I don't. Is it another 18,000, 20, 50, 100,000? So please continue. But that's a very important point. That's 18,000
Yeah,
we know.
that
That we
about.
know.
Jeez. Well, and so what really my question was like, let's say, I mean, let's say the Great Reset guys are the conductors, you know, China's part of the WEF. And would that be opportunism on their point, or just kind of co-coordination, like, hey, we both have our agendas, but they're running in parallel? I mean, normally what I found is with just doing, reverse analysis of like past campaigns, and a lot of our training is where you just look at a situation that's occurred, terrorist attack, whatever, and you backwards plan it and you analyze it that way. What I've found, and just in the cases I've been on, the targets I've had, typically there's not a star chamber with a bunch of people twirling mustaches. There's usually a couple high level deals, normally around business, and there's always profit. Um, and there's a stated goal, like we've seen with China, like we've seen with the Great Reset people. Um, and then there's a lot of parallel opportunists that really have nothing to do with the plan, but they see the opportunity, they roll with it, kind of like those little fish that cling to those whales and eat the algae. So I've seen a lot of that. So I always warn people, like, you know analyze everything, investigate everything. Just, when you get about 3 degrees away, you might want to just pump the brakes and go back to the target and
Yeah.
try a different direction. What is your impression, the long-winded way I had of get into the question? What is your impression of these, specifically the Chinese nationals coming through, from what you've seen, from your experience, from what people may be telling you? What is your impression? Like, who do you think they are? What do they look like to you? Why do you think they're here?
I believe that they're here to do damage to America, just like every bad actor is doing. They see America is open, meaning it's vulnerable. Then why would you not attack that vulnerability? You
Mm-hmm. Yep.
people have been lulled to sleep to think that everyone loves America. They don't love America. We're the Patriots, right? In football, we're winning all the time. I'm Tom Brady. I'm the best. No, not everybody loves the Patriots. They hate them. Half the country hates them. Same thing in the
Okay,
world.
I'm just gonna say for the record, because I'm in Salem, that my door is locked. I own a firearm. That was JJ Carrell that said that. But I will admit I am a New York Giants fan through and through.
Oh
You know,
gosh.
but
But you can understand the analogy of nations hating America. And why would you not? Okay, let me give you an example, a real life example. So the cartels run everything on the border. And I'll make this real quick.
Mhm.
They push over everybody that crosses the border, and they do it intentionally in order to strategically move personnel, law enforcement personnel to it, so they can open up huge gaps in the border to push across people that are paying exorbitant amounts of money to be smuggled in instead of giving up and being released because they would be found out and be returned to their home country,
Right.
or pulled over hard narcotics. For months at my old station in Imperial Beach, it's 6 miles of the border. All they did was push over thousands a day of single adult military age men from the continent of Africa, from Sudan, Cameroon, on and on and on, all terrorist hotbeds. Every 24 hours, Imperial Beach would be able to arrest 500 of them because they didn't have the capacity to bring all 2,000 of them. So 1,500 would sleep in tents or on the ground in America and wait their turn to come in. My sources tell me in a 24-hour period, 50 of those men hit the terrorist watch list. 50.
50.
5 of them, 50, 50. 5 of them would be confirmed absolute terrorists and be taken away somewhere else.
Oh
Here's where it
God.
gets very interesting. 45 of them, we couldn't confirm if they were terrorists or not. We just couldn't determine. So what do? We release them into America
That's got to be
every
intentional.
24 hours, and nobody talks about it. Right now, DHS says, look at us. We arrested 125 terrorists. It's the record this year. Are you telling me that those are the only 125 people across the border that were terrorists? Are you that stupid? Are you that willfully ignorant to believe that the DHS, who has hundreds of miles of the border wide open, that they're batting 1,000%? That every time they come up the bat, boom, they hit a single to a home run? Come on, man. You have thousands of terrorists in our nation. You have thousands of Chinese military age men in our nation. We have a standing army just of terrorists and Chinese nationals in our country right now. And it should scare the hell out of you, America. And this is not crazy data. This is DHS data we're talking about. Nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Well, and think about this too. It's like, look at the, I always tell people this. I'm like, do you really think that anyone who is out there on their podium shouting about gun violence cares about little children in Uvalde or any of these places?
Nope.
They care
No.
about disarming the population.
Yep.
Because
absolutely.
what a perfect, and keep in mind that let's say, looking at the Chinese Communist Party, they studied Desert Storm and Desert Shield. They covet that war as one of the most perfect wars. Few casualties, high returns. They want the same thing. It's not their style of fighting. And that's where they came up with in 1999 with unrestricted warfare. What a perfect, because I mean, they go by one of the main rules of warfare in China is, the perfect form of warfare is to win without firing a shot. And the other thing is like there's the 36 stratagems, and I think it's stratagem number 3. You're gonna love this one. It says feign attacking east and then attack west. Well, where are all our troops and all of our military? They're all pointing east right now. Meanwhile, in the west here, we're under attack, and it's anyone that 55 million terrorists, 50 in 24 hours on a daily basis, I think you said. Anyone that can't see that as a hostile uh invasion of our country, just because they're not wearing uniforms, people are
crazy.
And I think we got to wrap it up, but I'll say that, and this is a definitely to be continued. if you're good with it, because we've got a lot to talk about. And yeah, I think we should bring in the audience next time at a technical difficulty, but I'd love to get some feedback. And actually, this works out because this will give people a lot to think about, to mull over. What As we leave this segment, I always like to give the audience something they can do. I mean, even if they're building Hadrian's Wall, it's better to have people not be idle. And if they go down, if we go down, it's like go down with the fight. What calls to action would you give, let's say, a person in Kansas or rural New York or anywhere in the country? Like, what can the average person be doing? And I don't mean like, and no offense to my friends out there, but if I get another damn report telling me that Bill Gates is evil, I'm going to just scream. It doesn't matter to me. We all know it. But what type of actionable things can people be doing, either to defend their homes, to defend their communities, push back a little? I mean, and if you don't have it tonight, that's fine. But what do you recommend people do?
The old saying was, well, call your representatives in order to force a law. But who are you going to call? Who are you going to call? You going to call
Yeah,
McCarthy, the House leader of Republicans? He's doing nothing.
yeah, it's a joke.
I wish I had an answer for you, because it is the situation is so grand, it is so big, and it's so layered, and
Mhm.
it's so corrupted that nothing short of somebody coming into office as a president and just having the courage and strength to just destroy it all and fire everybody that was involved in it.
Yeah, yep,
So on
totally agree.
on a very personal level, you have to have firearms. You have to be able to protect your families. I'm telling
Mhm.
people that what's happening in Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, San Francisco, LA, Denver, on and on and on and on, Boston, is going to find its way out to the corners of America, the
It is
rural
now.
corners. It is, and it's going to find itself. You're going to wake up in a small town in Iowa, and all of a sudden you're going to have 1,000 Afghans living there. You're like, what happened? You're going to have 1,000 Uzbekistanians. You're like, whoa, hold on a second. My whole town's changed. Yes, that's what's happening in New York and Chicago. Their towns and cities are changing overnight. You need to get as educated as you can and be able to articulate what you want from people, from your government, and elect people that have the same view, and then hold them accountable. The one problem in America is we are grossly or willfully ignorant. We
Mhm.
don't want to know the truth.
Right.
But
Yeah. What
being
is up with
willfully
that?
ignorant does not change truth. It's going to happen if you
Mhm.
are aware of it or not. So I think the biggest thing is to become educated, understand
Yeah.
why you believe in what you believe. If you believe that illegal immigration needs to be stopped, then have 3, 4, 5 talking points and have the reason articulated in your brain, because you will be called a racist. You will be called a xenophobe. You will be called vile names. The power structure will come down on you. If they can arrest President Trump with all his billions of dollars, what do you think they could do to me and you? Think of
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
What could they do to us? So there's a, I am, as I get older, I am less of an optimist and more of a realist. And when
Mhm.
I realistically look at the big picture, I am frightened and I am extremely concerned, because that the other side is winning. They're winning. And I will give them, as much as it pains me, I will give them respect on the terms of, you are more malicious and more evil than I believed, and you are winning this war on illegal immigration and change in America. I applaud you.
Yeah.
You have
And I
to.
would
You
say
have
I would say this, people have, sorry to cut you off, but
no.
I'm very fueled by what you're saying. And it's I would even say so much as like we're letting them win. People just, I
Yes.
don't know what the hell is going on with people. I don't know why a Pew Research poll the other day came out saying that like half Americans are in favor of censorship. It's, I think a lot has to do with it's not real to them. It's very much like Fahrenheit 451, where like wars are things they hear about on the radios and everything. But you're right about these small towns. Like I'm in Salem, Massachusetts as we speak. You go down the, right over there from my window, I can see, there's some really nice people. They're out there fishing every night. They're mainly Mexican Americans. Most of these guys have been here for a while. You know, what I'm noticing is yesterday took the dog for a walk. My son was over in a 100-yard stretch. We met an Afghani dad and his two kids. Nice guy. Just got here. It's all being paid for. We met. Uh, we probably met 7 or 8 different immigrant groups, and the majority of them are good neighbors. They're not a problem, but what we're noticing is there's this core forming, and it's mainly in there's certain areas in every city that these used to be like the drug areas and the bad high crime areas. Now these are, like, I would even call it the hostile immigrant areas, where this is a different tone. This is not people who look a little nervous and maybe a little aggressive because they're scared and they're new to this country. No, this is entire massive mobs of people with these huge parties blocking off areas of the city that residents don't feel comfortable going, and they're not letting them they're not doing anything to make them feel comfortable. They're letting, it's very clear to a lot of people who've taken walks around here. They come back, they're like, yeah, that one street, I'd stay away from that. Now me, I'm like, fuck that. Like, that's the street I'm going right through the center of, because I think
Yeah,
you have
but
to
your
do
life
that.
has changed. But
Yeah, but
why?
my life has changed that I have to do that.
Yes. And who allowed that? Who voted for that change? Do you know anybody that voted for that change? I haven't met anyone. And all the
No,
walks of life I talked to, nobody voted for this. Nobody voted for 10, 20, 30 million people to come into our country legally and change the demographic and the way of life, and people that have not one scintilla of commonality with us religiously, socially, social norms, the way that you're governed, the way you deal with property
linguistically.
rights. They don't coincide with America. What makes America great is people that come to America because they want to become Americans. They want to wear blue jeans, work hard, be protected by our laws and order, and take over and absorb our cultural norms and become Americans. That's what's great about America. But our powers to be want us balkanized, and we are going to be balkanized like we have never seen before in the history of the United States. And you're going to have areas of the country that will be unable to be ruled, to be coordinated and policed, because those people that come illegally have no fear of law and order. So once they're here and they have thousands of their brothers and sisters, why would you now, after years of being here illegally and destroying our laws and taking our free stuff, why would you all of a sudden go, well, I'll be a law-abiding citizen because I love America? You're living in a fantasy land, man.
Yeah, totally.
There is no
And
end except destruction.
and if it's Chicago, they don't have to be scared of law and order because they're the ones wearing the badge.
Yes. Yeah, in
Which is
California as
insane.
well. It's insane.
Unbelievable. JJ, I'm gonna have to wrap it up, but I want to give you the
Okay.
last word. And this is riveting. And I'm gonna implore the audience to offer strategies that communities can have. I mean, JJ and I we're both realists. I'm kind of like, I'm just worried about protecting my home and my family,
Mhm.
because honestly, like, I don't got time to keep convincing people to
Nope.
protect themselves and wake up. Now we're at that time where, like, we're there. We're in the danger zone. And but maybe that is the key. Maybe if everyone wakes up and at least protects their family, maybe their neighbors, a little community, that's a bunch of little strongholds that might be what saves this country. But JJ, let me give you the last word. Say whatever you want to convey to the audience, and go ahead and throw out your social media and how to find you, your grid coordinates, as a lot of
The
our
grid
friends at
coordinates.
Real
We can
America's Voice
find,
like to say. Yeah.
yeah, well, you can find everything at jjcarrell.com, or just go to amazon.com, and my book is Invaded. It's It's readily available, and I have a YouTube channel at JJ Carrell where I post videos about twice a week about what is happening in America. And in my book, I write as if I'm speaking. I speak very directly, A to B, very linear. But I believe it paints a very honest description of what's happening in America right now. And I believe in my depth of my soul, and I pray that I'm wrong, but this is intentional. It is a destruction of the American immigration system to fundamentally transform America from a nation of citizens to non-citizens in order to rule and change and morph America into something that our founders never anticipated it would become. And I implore each and every one of us to become as educated as possible in the realm of our very busy lives. There's no excuse to be ignorant about anything. And when you do find yourself ignorant, it is your job as an American to become educated on that, because these issues that are facing America now are going to have profound impact. We either decide to be on the right side of history, or we're going to end up in a nation that may be called the United States of America, but it will never resemble what the United States of America is today.
Well said. And by the way, yeah, I'm sure you don't get this enough. Thanks for your service,
Oh,
because the work you guys do, you guys and girls do down there is largely unsung. So, in your continued
thank you.
service. So thanks for that, JJ. And for everyone else, please buy the book. I've read it. He's right. I felt like I knew JJ the minute I talked to him just from reading his book. And there's a lot of information. And maybe he's right. Get educated, educate us with stuff we might not know. And let's start doing more of this, connecting these dots. You know, I like to call my new friend JJ, and part of the network of people who are woken up and educating. And let's start building out our internal defense through what we're doing right here, and that's sharing information and coming up with solutions. And God willing, if that's just the JJ family and the O'Shea family on a hilltop, well, hey, that's better than nothing. So
That's
with
true.
that said, this is Brian O'Shea, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. And JJ will be back. We will do a live stream. Please submit your questions that you might have for JJ. Go ahead and submit those to brian@dailyclout.io. And that way, and if there's some topics or that we didn't cover that you're very interested in, this man knows more about just what's going on at the border. When you're in the government, a lot of different layers going on, and he's done a lot of other stuff as well. So if you want to pick that brain, go ahead and send your questions, and try to make them as clear as possible, and articulate as possible, so I can address those, because I won't be able to address everyone's, but we'll try to cover the big topics. But send those to brian@dailyclout.io, and we will let you know as soon as we can get JJ back on, which should be soon. And buy the book, get on his Substack. Oh, and really quick, the name of your Substack again is?
Border Truth, and you can just find it at jjcarrell at substack.com.
Definitely subscribe to that. It's really good stuff. And you're going to learn a lot, and hopefully that will be actionable for you, because it certainly has been a learning experience for me, and has packed me with tons of great actionable intelligence that I know how to use it. And hopefully when I run it by JJ, he won't say, no, that's insane, don't do that. But I'll take it from there. So
Right.
thanks so much, JJ, for your time. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon, real soon, I hope.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. And that is it. So let me stop recording.